Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into a new episode of Capitol View, a weekly webcast brought to you by the Daily Journal and djournal.com, talking about what's going on in the state legislature, state politics. I'm your host, Brad Locke, joined, as always, by Capitol Bureau Chief Bobby Harrison. He's down there in Jackson. How you doing, Bobby? Have a good weekend?
Yeah, Brad, what about you?
Oh, can't complain, Bobby. I'm getting ready to move, so I've been doing a lot of packing.
You can complain then.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Bobby, we got a lot to talk about, even though, again, they've been out of session for a few weeks now. There's always something going on or something worth discussing. So we've got three topics I want to talk about today. This bill reading case before the state Supreme Court, and we'll get to more detail about that. Also, the state revenue collections for the past month. Got some news there, and the rift between Herb Frierson and some other legislators and the state's superintendents. We're going to talk about all of those today. Let's start with the bill reading, Bobby. People probably remember that during this past legislative term, some lawmakers, easy for me to say, some lawmakers wanted to have bills read out loud, which is allowed, and it's not uncommon. But these days we have the technology for someone, a non-human, to do it, a program, and Philip Gunn, Speaker of the House, decided to play them at a very high rate of speed. And at one point, nobody could understand what was being read, which I guess kind of defeated the purpose. And now Representative Jay Hughes, a freshman from Oxford, has filed a lawsuit saying that Gunn violated the state's constitution by having those bills read at an incomprehensible speed. And the news from late last week, Bobby, the Supreme Court hearing the case, they don't want to actually listen to the evidence. They don't want to listen to those bills being read too fast. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. In his lawsuit, he referred to it as warp speed.
Yeah.
So I think that's like in Scotty and
that's a Star Trek reference.
Star Trek, right? That's right. But this goes back to the session when there was a good bit of contention during the 2016 session. At one point, legislators requested each bill be read before the final vote was taken, which is their right under the Constitution. And the Speaker of the House, the House leadership was but was using a reading application, a computer reading application to read the bills, to save the voices of the staff, legislative staff. And Gunn had the Speaker had I don't know, an old reference to I don't know if you ever saw a movie called This Is Spinal Tap, where the guitarist was explaining that they had the amplifier turned up to 12, and he said, why not just 10 is the highest you go? So no, we have it to 12. Well, I guess they had the reading application on a 12 because it was so going so fast you couldn't understand a word. Jay Hughes filed a lawsuit. The Supreme Court essentially stopped the lawsuit from going forward, so the Speaker could continue to have the bills read at that warp pacement. Now, lo and behold, past couple of weeks, the Supreme Court said we hadn't forgotten about this lawsuit, so they're going to actually hear oral arguments on it in July and decide and rule on, I guess, whether the Speaker has the right to have the bills read at any speed he wants to have them read. And Hughes said, if you're going to do that, let's listen to the actual recording of the bill reading, and the Supreme Court said, no, we don't want to do that, which kind of begs the question, I mean, how are you going to rule in this case without actually listening to the bills being read? So, but anyway, there's more to come on that in July. It's kind of a sort of an arcane, vague thing that's sort of inside baseball, but still it's kind of interesting when you get down to it, and the fights in the legislature. And exactly how fast can bills be read and still stay within the constitutional mandate? That's going to be, I guess, decided by the Supreme Court in the coming months.
Yeah, and when they put this in the Constitution, there were no reading programs like this. It was human beings. So unless you had like the micro machines guy out there reading them, you'd be able to understand what was being read. So Philip Gunn says, the Constitution doesn't say how fast you have to read them or in what manner. So is it one of those, maybe, he's following the letter of the law, maybe not the spirit of the law so much?
Well, to get real vague, I mean, the U.S. Supreme Court, when they were debating pornography at one time, I think it was Justice Potter Stewart said, what's the definition of pornography? I don't know if I can give you a definition, but I know it when I see it. Yeah. And I guess this kind of falls in that category. You're not sure what is too fast, but I know when I see it or hear it in this case. And it's interesting to note that at the same time the bills are being read in the House, at the same time the legislators, senators were requesting Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves had to have the bills read, and the Lieutenant Governor also used a computer reading application, but he had it at a fast level, but a level that could be understood. So that was just a difference between the two chambers that was going on during the session, and so I'm kind of surprised the Supreme Court's wading off into this sort of legislative rules, but I guess they are, and so that's interesting in itself that the Supreme Court in the past, when it was sort of the inner workings of the legislature, the Supreme Court said, no, we don't want to mess with that. Y'all decide amongst yourselves and do whatever you want to. And we're happy with that. But they're actually going to hear arguments in this case. So I guess they're going to rule. And so that's interesting in itself.
Yes, it is. Well, let's move on to revenue collections, Bobby. They've been lagging for the past several months in Mississippi. Had some good news in May, though. According to the Department of Revenue, the state collected $4.3 million more than the official estimate, nearly 1% more. So that's good news, Bobby, but it's maybe not great news because it might not really change things.
No, it doesn't change things, Brad. May was a little bit better, but overall, I got the numbers here in front of me because I'm not real good with numbers. I'm a journalist. But collections for the year, and there's one when I talk about year, I'm talking about fiscal year. So the 1 month left in the budget year, and through 11 months of the current budget year, the state has collected 121 million less than it was projected to collect in revenue. And those numbers are important because they also are kind of misleading. They're actually worse than that. That number includes a $66 million in lawsuit settlements from Attorney General Jim Hood that the state wasn't expecting to collect. This was just this is not tax collection, income tax or sales tax. This is just like one-time money for a settlement of a lawsuit. So you can't count it every year. But they have that money, and if it wasn't for that, it'd be even worse than it is. And it's also important that when you talk about this is less than what they were expected to collect. This is important because they're 121 million less than was expected to collect, which meant that's what they based the budget on last year when they passed the budget. So they're in a pretty big budget hole. The governor's already made a couple rounds of budget cuts and transferred money from the Working Cash Stabilization Fund to shore up budgets. And it's suffice to say they're going to start the next budget year on July 1st, pretty much, if not in a budget hole, real close to a budget hole. And if revenue collections do not pick up soon, there's going to agencies already been forced to make cuts, and it's going to get much worse before it gets better unless revenue picks up in the coming months.
Yeah, and you need to make a distinction, I guess. Income tax collections improved in May, but sales tax collections, the largest source of the revenue for the state, down 4.5%.
Yeah, and they're down in corporate income tax, which is roughly 10%, a smaller chunk of the budget, but still a significant chunk, about 10% of the total revenue. They were I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but they were way down in May, and that just continued the trend that's been going on for over a year now. Corporate tax collections being down, and the conventional wisdom is two things are going on there. The legislature's made some corporate income tax cuts in recent years that are taking hold, and more are on the way. Some big ones are still on the way. So it looked for corporate tax collections to be even down more in the coming years. And on top of that, the state actually does a lot better than you realize. You might think as far as or had been doing better as far as oil and gas production, and so that has been a significant economic engine for the state. But with the gasoline prices being lower, there's less oil production going on in Mississippi because it costs more to produce oil in Mississippi than it does in some other places. So that the oil production in Mississippi has slowed significantly, so that has impacted corporate taxes also.
Okay, let's move on to some education chatter, Bobby. I had a piece of legislation that I guess passed kind of toward the end of the session. I think it was. It has to do with superintendents using public funds to pay for their professional association, of which they're members. And this has caused a rift between certain legislators, in particular Herb Frierson, the Republican from Poplarville, House Appropriations Chair, and the state superintendents, because they're not allowed to use these public funds now to pay for this association, which they say provides critical support, including a lot of continuing education hours. So, kind of first, some background, Bobby. What's kind of at the root of this? I mean, I know they haven't always gotten along.
Well, I guess this is Frierson. By the way, Frierson is on his way out. He's going to become director of the Department of Revenue in the coming months. So he's on his way out. But on his way out, he I guess he would take responsibility. Let's just say the legislative leadership inserted language in the budget bill for education saying that no public funds could be used for to pay for the membership into the Mississippi Association of School Superintendents, and that was inserted in the bill. It wasn't talked about, but it was in a rather lengthy budget bill somewhere down in there. It has that language prohibiting the money to be used for for superintendents to join this association. Now, on the surface, this may sound like, well, they don't need to be using public money for this, but for each school district paid about $1,200, I think $1,250 for all of their administrators, superintendents, deputy superintendents, curriculum coordinators, even principals to join this association. And it provides, it was the mechanism used for many of these administrators to get their continuing education credits. And so, but what the legislature passed this year prohibits the school districts from using money to enroll their administrators in the Mississippi Association of School Superintendents. And Frierson made no bones about it. The language was put in there. He said because last year during the fight over Initiative 42, he felt that the superintendents and other education groups went too far in trying to convince the public to pass out Initiative 42. As you remember, Initiative 42 was a citizen-sponsored initiative which would have changed the state constitution to place more emphasis on funding public schools in Mississippi. Public schools have been underfunded about $1.8 billion since 2008. And he's felt that the superintendents besmirched his integrity or integrity of legislators who opposed Initiative 42. So he admits he did this. This was done as a revenge to the superintendents. Now, other groups, I mean, groups throughout the state, including legislators, have their fees for joining various professional groups paid for through state funds. So, I mean, you're saying like superintendents, you could stop a lot of groups from having their professional organization paid for through the public funds. So, but right now it's just the superintendents that's being punished.
Yeah, and when he asked if they were being punished, he didn't say outright yes. He just said there are consequences in politics. I mean, I don't know if it's certain superintendents that he has a problem with, but he said that, and then Hob Bryan, the Democrat from Amory, basically said, well, he needs to have thicker skin. If people call you a liar, you're in politics. That's going to happen.
Yeah, Brian. He didn't. I would say he didn't actually say yes. He said heck yes or something else. Yes, and Hob Bryan made the point that in politics, you're a politician, you're going to be criticized. I think close to direct quote, he said, it's kind of definition of what being a politician is to take heat for the positions you take. So anyway, that's an ongoing story. It's just, Brad, the legislative session ends, but these stories just continue to fester throughout the year, it seems like.
Yeah, they've got legs, Bobby. Anyway, so thank you all for tuning in. That's it for this episode of Capitol View. If you missed any of it or just want to watch it again, you can watch the replay at djournal.com. Be sure to give Bobby a follow on Twitter at BobbyHarrison9. You can follow me. I'm at Brad Locke. We'll do this again next Monday around 2 o'clock. Tell everybody, hey, tell your friends. Okay, it's free to watch, djournal.com. By the way, the whole website is now free from the first click to the last. It's a change we recently made, so be sure to spread the word about that. And again, thank you all for tuning in. Bobby, have a good week, sir.
All right, Brad. Thank you. Stay cool.